How's it going, everybody? We're back at it with the latest Big Mets update segment, and we have a lot of deep dive in this one, and I appreciate the patience greatly. My roughly 200 concurrent live viewers are in a late post-game segment here, recording this roughly 1 a.m. Eastern after the Mets got absolutely destroyed in the worst way possible by the Arizona Diamondbacks, thanks to Edwin Diaz going in for a 4-out save and giving up a grand slam in the 8th inning to Corbin Carroll, who has now hit 6 home runs in his past 11 or 12 games now. Absolutely gut-wrenching loss for the Mets after rallying all the way back down 4-0, leaving it to Edwin Diaz, their $100 million closer, to lead the way to their demise. Yes, we have a lot of frustration with that. If you want to check out our breakdown, make sure you check out the post-game segment if you haven't already. But all my live and replay viewers here that are watching for the latest Big Mets updates presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook, check them out today by clicking that link down below the description. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. We have some big ones to get into tonight because as the Mets currently stand, as I mentioned in our postgame at least, 4 games out of a playoff spot at the time of recording this one, it is absolutely vital that the Mets make sure that they get the best quality outings from their relievers and from everyone else involved. And when we have seen the Mets offense and starting pitching, yes, Sevy was far from brilliant in his latest outing, but he still put up 9 strikeouts and he still kept the Mets fairly in this one for the most part when things could have been much worse and fast. This bullpen, after being absolutely nails for the Mets the first month or so of the season, has been their demise the vast majority of the season because of lack of proper fluctuation and configuration in that bullpen, because of Edwin Diaz's injuries, suspension that we saw there, which is all the more reason why to see the same ump and Vic let Justin Steele wipe his hands yesterday, washed him, and not Edwin this season. I got a lot to say about that. We broke that down in our Big Mets updates video from this past day or so. Check it out. Now let's get into here with the Mets and their updates, because not only with Edwin Diaz, but with this bullpen configuration, they need help. And if this Mets team still has a shot to make playoffs, which you all know right now is on the outside looking in, a lot of fans are already saying, playoffs? What do you mean playoffs? It ain't gonna happen, buddy. I don't know what else to tell you. I hear you. I get it. But until the Mets are finally out, I'm not gonna write them off, because those are the same fans that wrote them off when they were 11 games below 500 earlier this season. We'll have a playoff spot. Things can happen so drastically and so differently in a week span, and that is exactly why I will not count them out until they are officially out. The same way David Stearns is not counting out the Mets yet either. And in an effort to still try to add to this Mets bullpen and make it better than what it currently is, we look at the configuration headlined by Danny Young as their lone southpaw option. Young, who pitched 2.2 scoreless innings for the Mets this past night at the time of recording this, has been a solid relief option for the Mets. However, when evaluating lefty options, there have been some huge names made available recently on the but the waiver wire market, rather, that we're going to get into in a second. And all the more reason why we can expect the Mets to probably dabble in the bullpen front here and do it as soon as possible has a lot to do also with the very unfortunate news that we quite literally just found out here just mere seconds ago, is that yes, Nunez is dealing with an ailment right now. Nunez, who did not pitch for the Mets after he was basically a consideration in the 8th inning, he did not pitch because he is still slowly building back, coming off the rehab assignment, and might need another injured list assignment, according to Carlos Mendoza, as he is dealing with forearm tightness and is considered day-to-day. So one of the Mets' most reliable relievers, arguably their most reliable reliever this season when called upon, Nunez, could be back on the shelf yet again. As gut-wrenching as that is to say, how can the Mets reinforce this bullpen? Well, there are a couple arms that have just been made available of recent that can certainly fit the bill, to say the least. And let's start with the one that I think is very appealing. Both these arms have something in common. They are going to add a lot of salary for the 2025 season, and you're investing basically in one final month in hopes of your team making playoffs to eat the salary for this year and next. So I can see the lack of appeal to some, but I also understand this is Steve Cohen and David Stearns. They're going to have a further willingness and an interest to do these kind of moves more than the average team in baseball, because their financial flexibility is supreme. And let's not forget the endless dollars that are coming off the books at the end of the season. There are plenty coming off. And Drew Smyly here, as we see, has officially been waived by the Chicago Cubs. Funny enough, for the Cubs, nipping out the heels just in a game and a half or so behind the Mets in the wild card at the time of recording this one right now, dropping one of their most reliable relief pitching options this season in Drew Smyly, who's posted a 2.9 ERA in 40 games this season. Smyly's first season in a number of years being utilized as solely a reliever and not as a starter as well, so he can provide length for you, can eat multiple innings. And Smyly isn't overwhelming at all when it comes comes to the swing and miss stuff. That's not what you're getting in Smyly. You're getting a soft tossing southpaw that the Mets know very well with the ones that they've utilized this year, and Danny Young and Alex Young, among others, as guys who can come in and induce those ground ball outs. That is why Smyly currently sits in the 86th percentile in that regard this season, 60th percentile there in hard hit percentage. So, barrel percentage at 86th percentile, hard hit percentage at 60th percentile. I actually sincerely apologize because I thought for whatever reason Drew Smyly was going to be one of those more ground ball pitchers, yet I'm completely wrong here because his ground ball percentage is at a measly 8%. I honestly just have the stats flip-flop here with the barrel and the ground ball percentage because when I see a soft tossing lefty, I'm expecting that soft tossing lefty who utilizes a sinker more than any other pitch to be in the strong percentiles there and his ground ball percentage. So even though that he does induce ground ball outs, he doesn't do it at a quality rate that we have seen this season. So some lady luck has come in and play for Drew Smyly this season to induce his outs with the sinker that sits 93, the curveball that sits 80, and the curveball that's the cutter that sits 89. But what we have seen out of Smyly this season per Fangraphs, as you guys can see here, a roughly 8K per 9 to a 3 walks per 9. Don't love the K to walk ratio, but a 2.84 ERA rate, a 3.55 expected ERA rate, a 4.77 FIP. Not great numbers. One, you would still be eating his 2025 contract as well. So basically the question is, do you want to take on Drew Smyly for another year where you're going to be having to eat the remainder of that contract, where you're paying multiples of millions for a guy where you don't necessarily know if he's going to be your main lefty option in the bullpen, if he's going to be as swing man option for you as both a starter and reliever? I like Drew Smyly with his ability to fit multiple areas of a need for the Mets, but I also understand the argument to say, hey, you know what, maybe we shouldn't eat the entire contract for a guy where, yes, he might be impact for us down the stretch, but is he really going to be that much bigger of an upgrade over a Danny Young right now? That I think is a somewhat fair argument to some of you Mets fans. I'm really curious how you feel about that. So all my live viewers and my replay viewers down below in the comments. 1200, thank you so much for the $5 holla. 1200 says, sad. At this point, only Saint Sapucky put some respect on his name can save us. Bring him back. If you guys know the inside jokes in our live show with Thomas Sapucky, then you guys are amazing followers on the WardyNYM platform. If you don't know, you know now. Thomas Sapucky, Mets legend. If you know, you know, baby. But to continue to break this one down, Drew Smyly, certainly a feasible option for the Mets over some current relief options. Can eat innings for you. Drew Smyly, who has experience as well in a lot of big games throughout his young career, had time with the Atlanta Braves where, had some success. Chicago Cubs is where he's been the past couple years. Had a solid 2022 campaign, not so great 2023, even though the K per 9 was up by over a strikeout that we saw versus year prior. Smyly, just another innings eater type of lefty option for you that is somewhat appealing, but there is one lefty option out there that is far more appealing than anyone else, and that is, yes, Taylor Rogers. If you guys don't know Taylor Rogers, let me enlighten you. Taylor Rogers is, in my opinion, one of the most not only feasible but sexy options for the Mets to consider among all relief options right now on the waiver wire. Yes, the San Francisco Giants still pushing for playoffs have now parted ways with Taylor Rogers because Rogers is owed another $11 million for next season. So if the Mets want to take on Taylor Rogers' contract, they would basically be eating $12 million for the remainder of this season and then next season as well. Is that an appealing thing for this Mets team and Steve Cohen? Not for the average club, but for a Mets team that can flex their muscles and also can desperately utilize a Taylor Rogers, a crafty southpaw option in this bullpen that actually throws, solid when it comes to not so much the gas, but his sinker sweeper 1-2 punch has been brilliant all throughout his career. Taylor Rogers is a guy that I've been wanting going back to his time with the Minnesota Twins. Now the Mets are going to have the opportunity to pick him up now, which again is always better late than never, especially in the case of Taylor Rogers here. Look at the Baseball Savant numbers with me for Taylor, the 33-year-old southpaw this season. What this fellow teammate and brother Tyler, who is the side-arming, submarining, just madman that he is there with the Giants as well. A 2.45 ERA rate for the veteran southpaw in 54 games this season, a 1.2 WHIP. We're looking at an 84 expected ERA rate, an 84 expected batting average, 73 percentile in the pitching run value, 72 in the fastball run value, 64 in the breaking run value. How can you not love what you're getting here in Taylor Rogers? Fastball velo is at the 35th percentile because he sits 93 on the sinker, 79 on the sweeper. The average fastball velocity is in the 86th percentile because he does not give up hard contact. We have seen too much this season. Chase percentage is in the 1 percentile, is not getting anyone to bite, but that's because he's not a swing and miss pitcher. That is not what you're looking there in Taylor Rogers. What you're looking in Taylor Rogers is the whip percentage, still at 58%, so it's solid, but you're not getting a lot of guys to bite on, the swing and miss that you're going to have with that sweeper per se. The K percentage at a whopping 87 percentile. So funny enough, I'm actually contradicting myself a lot in the show today, and I do apologize for that, because after seeing, it's kind of crazy to see the chase percentage as low as it is in the 1 percentile, then the K percentage a whopping 87 percentile. So I sincerely apologize for misspeaking as much as I have in this video. I typically don't do that with relief options for the Mets as I break them down, but I think between the waiver wire pickups and having such a short period of time to make that happen, one, and two, just being still very frustrated with the Mets' latest loss has me in kind of a mix-up here right now. But 87 percentile in the K percentage, nothing to scoff at. Above league average in the walk percentage, above league average in the barrel percentage. Important for a Mets team that has walked everyone their mother this year. The most important stat of all, 0 hard hit contact whatsoever, 82nd percentile in hard hit percentage, and 59th percentile in ground ball percentage. My simple response is, what are we doing here? David Stearns knows Taylor Rogers better than most everybody. In case you guys don't know Taylor Rogers, David Stearns went out of his way and actually helped acquire him back in the 2022 season. Stearns' final year, a part of that front office for the Brewers. I don't believe he was leading the way. Still, at this point, I believe Matt Arnold had taken over, but he was still a part of their decision-making for sure and a part of that panel. And what we saw there in the 2022 season, Rodgers went from the Twins to the Milwaukee Brewers, had an up-down year that we saw, and then in 2023, first year with the Giants, a 3.83 ERA. Now this season, a 2.45 ERA, a 3.15 expected ERA, a 3.44 FIP. Hilarious that the Giants did not trade away this asset with over 10K per 9 to a sub 3 walks per 9. I love that right around a 9K to walk ratio. That is what I love to see there for Taylor Rogers. This has been a guy that David Stearns not only understands during their short time in Milwaukee a couple years ago for the second half of 2022, but ultimately Taylor Rogers and his impact throughout his entire career has been consistent, has been effective, and he has been that guy to pound the strike zone, get a solid strikeout rate of a career 10.6K per 9 to 2.5 walks per 9. What is there not to love in Taylor Rogers, and how is he not unbelievably appealing to the Mets here? So I got to be completely honest with you. Yes, I don't love the idea of spending 10 plus mil next year for a relief option for the Mets, but if you're going to do it, Taylor Rogers, I think, is an exception of exactly that. And if, say, hey, things don't work out, Steve Cohen has no problems eating the dollars the same way that he has in years past to acquire bad contracts just to see where you get the best out of relievers, like a Trevor Gott and Chris Flexen from a year ago, as just one of multiple examples we have seen since Steve Cohen has become owner. Taylor Rogers, would love to see him in Queens, and definitely want to know how you Amazing Mets fans feel about him in the comments down below. So that is the latest there on those key updates for Taylor Rogers and Drew Smyly. Two interesting southpaw options for the Mets to consider. Now let's get into some big updates here, because as we mentioned, with Nunez down, it's vital for the Mets to get some bullpen acquisitions and fast, especially if he does need an IL stint. Now let's transition when talking about the bullpen. Let's get into some other key takeaways, some updates for you all that have to do with the prospects. And when we talk about the prospects, there were some awesome takeaways to break down. So we're going to do a deep dive on not only all the latest that we saw from AAA Syracuse, along with AA, Single A, you name it, but we're also going to highlight the key takeaways from each of those respective outings that we saw. So let's do exactly that. But before we do have to highlight one man who did have an RBI single tonight and has been leading the way here that we have seen for a little bit now. That has been Luis Angel Acuna, because Luis Angel Acuna just looks like he is inevitably going to be the Mets call-up option. As we mentioned yesterday on the channel, yesterday, we posted our latest Big Mets update segment having to do with Francisco Lindor trying to recruit Juan Soto, basically, and the Mets really considering Luis Angel Acuna, how he looks like the perfect fit now as their call-up option, as we came out with that video over the past day or so. Now, since then, we have heard from the horse's mouth himself and Carlos Mendoza that yes, the Mets are absolutely considering Luis Angel Acuna as a guy. And just in case you guys don't believe me, this is what Carlos Mendoza had to say earlier today. Again, has made it clear that when talking about a call-up for this September, the Mets will be prioritizing a speedy, versatile player when evaluating that position. There was no one faster. There was no one that profiles better in this area than Luis Angel Acuna. And Acuna this season, mind you, has done the following. He's been hot over the past month as well. He's had 8 hits in his past 15 at-bats or so. But, his speed has definitely been enticing, and his speed is really what's been carrying the way for the Mets to consider him now as their September call-up. After Brett Beatty sadly went down with injury to have him out for the remainder of the season, Luis Angel Acuna, who definitely hasn't had the biggest upside offensively this year that we have seen at the minor league level in AAA Syracuse, has still provided enough great defensive ability at short and second base, and also the ability to steal bags at a great clip the way that he has done. Mind you, Luisano Acuna has stolen bags 3 times more than any other Syracuse Met currently. Safe to say that barring any drastic changes and barring anything changing from now up until the beginning of September, Luisano Acuna will be the Mets' September call-up, barring changes for the offensive position. Thank you so much for the donation, Francisco, with the $5. Great member says, I think we got this. God bless. God bless to you, my friend. I greatly appreciate that. I think the Mets still have an opportunity here too. I firmly do. It is not over yet. We're getting close, but it is not over yet. So that is the latest there on Acuna. So now let's get into the latest in general with the Syracuse Mets, among others, everybody. So let's double check the Syracuse Mets box score. And let's see how they perform in their latest game, because we're not only going to highlight the Syracuse Mets, we're going to get into the Rumble Ponies, the Cyclones, and cap things off with the Port St. Lucie Mets, as I have some very exciting things to say about Mets' top prospect that they drafted in the first round this year, Carson Benge. But before we get there, let me actually delete some tabs quick so that way that they aren't in the way, causing any problem. And that way my computer isn't going to run any slower than it already is, because it's going at a snail's pace, as it typically does when I'm trying to run 10 tabs while also doing live shows and just things along those lines in general. So if that takes a while to load, that's honestly not a problem. I can just pull them up on my phone as well. But we saw the Syracuse Mets come out tonight, and they definitely looked like a team that's been in the win column as of late. Pretty sure the Syracuse Mets, did they win or lose last time? I actually need to double check and think about that. They have been performing better as of late, and them now on the season, we got Max Kranick with another solid relief outing. Let's get into all these key updates here, everybody. So I'm going to actually just leave this here on the Twitter, how we had it, because the Syracuse Mets beat the Iron Pigs, the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs tonight by a final score of 3-2. Acuna had a 2-for-5 game. As we mentioned, he had an RBI single, a 264 average, a 675 OPS now in the season. Do not expect Acuna to be anything like his brother Ronald when it comes to power on the offensive standpoint. The similarities that they have is their great versatility defensively, and when it comes to range and just speed overall, and that speed on the bags is what carries them. Other standouts, Luke Ritter, 2-for-5. DJ Stewart, 2-for-5 as well. Drew Gilbert, 1-for-5. On the pitching end, Blade Tidwell, 2 earned runs allowed over 4 innings of work, 6 hits, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, a 5.4 ERA for Blade Tidwell, one of the Mets' top pitching prospects who has really struggled to command the zone at the AAA level this season, something he's still trying to fine-tune about his game, but he's had some better outings as of late. Max Kranick had a solid 2-inning outing of work, not a problem. No hits given up, no walks, nothing. 2 strikeouts, a 3.38 ERA. That's another arm the Mets may consider a call-up, but I think it's too little too late at this rate. Matt Gage had a scoreless outing, southpaw option for the Mets in the minor leagues. Shintaro Fujinami had a beautiful inning, allowed a walk and 2 strikeouts, has a sub-7 ERA now in the minor leagues, but he's come a long way after a brutal start this year. Eric Orzi with a scoreless outing as well. So those are the latest updates there, everybody. Let me double check quick what we have going for the Rumble Ponies and the latest on their outings, if they won or lost in their past game or not. Then we'll check the Cyclones, and then we'll wrap things up with the Port St. Lucie Mets and Mets' top prospect that they drafted this year, as we mentioned, and Carson Benge. And as we see here, the Hartford ended up beating Binghamton by a final score that we see here of 4-3. And for the Rumble Ponies in this outing got a solid pitching outing from Pintaro, who went 5.2 innings of 7 earned run ball, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, 7 hits allowed. Nothing else notable on the pitching end. And offensively for the Mets in this matchup, they had Jeremiah Jackson go 2-for-4 with 2 RBIs. Wyatt Young continues to tear the cover off the ball as an elite contact hitting leadoff hitter. Since moving Wyatt Young, the shortstop prospect for the Mets, over Mr. Alex Ramirez there, who's been playing the outfield in the leadoff spot, he's been amazing. Wyatt Young 2-for-3 with an RBI, 287 average, a 753 OPS at the minor league level. Ryan Clifford was 1-for-4 with a run scored and did have a massive home run yesterday. However, did have a 3 strikeout game along with his 1 hit today. Right around 800 plus OPS and over a 200 average. That is the Ryan Clifford experience. So now to get to my guy Nick Morabito and what the Cyclones are doing, let's check the Cyclones box score and see how their matchup was this past night as well. As I double check the chat, everybody, I appreciate our roughly 200 viewers right now. As you guys are watching live, let me know your continued takeaways from the Mets' 8-5 loss and the Big Mets updates, highlighted by their ability to potentially pounce the waiver wire, along with the Mets updates on the prospect end. And Nick Morabito had an 0-for-4 day, sadly. Brooklyn Cyclones 162 though, and Burrow, who was just called up, moved up there from low A to high A now in Brooklyn after tearing the cover off the ball that we saw there with the St. Lucie Mets. He did not have a hit in his first game there, but who did have a great great day we saw with Smith at the second base position, 3 for 4 with 3 runs scored. Nothing else notable there. On the pitching end, we saw Thornton go 5 shutty, 4 hits allowed, 3 strikeouts, 0 walks, 0 earned runs, a 3.72 ERA. Ammons did not have a great outing, but he did pitch over 2.1 innings, which is something to make note of. 3 hits, 1 earned run allowed, 0 walks, 3 strikeouts, a 1.56 ERA. Know the name Ammons because he's absolutely a southpaw option the Mets may consider out of their bullpen as soon as next season. But now let's get to last but not least the Port St. Lucie Mets and their box score from this past night, because Carson Benge was far and away the big standout here. And Port St. Lucie actually won a ball game. I will be jaw dropped. They won by a final score of 10-7. St. Lucie's 42-78 on the season, doing their best little White Sox impression. Still not as bad, but yeah, not so great either. We see Vargas go 1 for 3 with 2 runs scored and 2 walks. Vargas, who's had a very underwhelming season this year, in part because of ailment, but just a lack of consistency as well. A 205 average of 587 OPS that they acquired last year as part of the David Robertson trade that we saw. And Carson Benge, a huge day, already with a 333 average, over 1,000 OPS, very small sample size to kick off his pro career after being drafted by the Mets earlier this summer. A 3 for 4 day that we saw with 2 runs scored, 3 RBIs, and a walk. That is what we love to see from Mets top prospect that they just drafted out of the first round this past year. And something tells me it's not going to take him all that long to get to the bigs. And for a second straight day, Carson Benge ripped a home run. So in back-to-back days, Carson now at home runs at the professional Port St. Lucie level, and he just looked absolutely fantastic. And last but not least, final update that I have for you, among Mets draft picks that we saw this year and them looking good right now in the minor leagues, we have an awesome update on Ryan Lambert, who the Mets drafted in the 8th round this year. He has already been touching 101 miles per hour in the bridge league. So great stuff there with the velocity. Excited to see Ryan Lambert and his potential now in the Mets organization as they just drafted him this year in the 8th round. And for Carson Benge, just off to a tremendous start, everything that you'd hope for a top round draft pick that the Mets acquired this year. Great stuff to see from the Mets minor leagues overall, all around. But that's going to do it, everybody, for our latest Big Mets update segment. I greatly appreciate you all taking the time to chime in as the Port St. Lucie Mets had themselves a big day. As I mentioned, Ewing had a great day too on the offensive end, and on the pitching end, I will highlight just for a second that Diaz went 6 innings of 9 hit, 3 run, 2 earned run balls, 0 walks, 4 strikeouts, a sub-5 ERA there at the single A level. But that's going to do it for our latest Mets update segment. Be on the lookout as we'll be live right after the conclusion of Game 3 against the Diamondbacks for our latest post-game coverage. That'll be wherever you get your audio podcasts as well, not long after. Spotify, Apple, Google, you name it. So check it out for all your podcast needs for our post-game coverage. Thank you all so much for watching live on YouTube. If you're not watching on Twitter, X as well that you have in previous days, hit that like and subscribe button on your way out, and stay tuned for consistent coverage all in season and off season long, talking about the Amazons. And on your way out, also make sure to check out BetUS, America's #1 sports book that has you covered with all your sports betting needs. Check them out today by clicking that link down below the description. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Thank you so much for watching. This is your guy Wardy signing out. Peace out, folks.